This is our regular community development meeting, and so in Commissioners Brooks and Duncan are here, and Commissioner Filios is excused. Pat, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. There's no opening remarks. And is there any conflicts of interest? None. So our first item is a signing, and that's MSP 21-0007, Revelstoke Ranch. And that was one that you heard last week. And I was not here for that one, but that's all right. If you want to make a motion to execute.
I move that we sign MSP 21-0007, Revelstoke Ranch.
I'll second.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Chairman Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Chairman Filios is excused.
All right, so I'll sign that. You didn't fold it into a little airplane. It didn't make it all the way over. Right. So our next item is MSP 21-0004, Ranch 54, which is a request by Magnuson Properties Corporation for preliminary approval of a major subdivision, 27 lots, 13 parcels, 142 acres. And this one looks like Vlad.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'll try to be as brief as possible, although this was somewhat of a complicated project based on the location of the property and some of the responses we received from a variety of different agencies. As you stated, this is a request for a 27-lot subdivision located on existing 13 parcels of land. The request is located just east of City of Athol, adjacent to what is currently known as the crossings at Athol. It's a commercial development. There are multiple commercial businesses that are currently operating, and I believe there is at least one additional building under construction, which will be, I believe, a restaurant. But I believe a majority of you are familiar with the area. The subject property is highlighted in this location. It's gaining access off of Howard Road, which is bisecting the property. Highway 54 is directly to the south. The property is fairly flat. It's heavily vegetated. It is also bisected from by an abandoned right-of-way, a railroad right-of-way, which is, I believe, under the ownership of Kootenai County in this location. The zoning is rural. There are different zoning designations in the immediate area. You have commercial to the west and to the southwest. You have agricultural suburban with commercial to the northeast, where the Hackney Airfield is located. You have rural to the north, south, west, and east as well. A majority of the parcels in the area that are in the rural zone are greater than 5 acres in size. You do have a number of parcels that are less than 2 acres in size in the agricultural suburban zone of the Hackney Airfield plat. The comprehensive plan designation is transitional. It is abutting City of Athol. We have seen in a number of jurisdictions within Kootenai County where there have been incremental annexations over the past decade where they have, the city limits have actually encroached into not just the border designation under the comp plan, but transitional as well. And I believe at some point we will be reassessing our comp plan map to be more up to date with the annexations that have occurred throughout the county. You have suburban designation to the east as well. Transitional comp plan designation does allow for development such as subdivisions in the way that they could be easily annexed into the city limits and developed at urban density. As I stated before, the project site is located within the City of Athol area of city impact. These are some of the existing uses in the area. You have the Kootenai County Solid Waste Facility. It's the rural collection site. As some of you may know, there are a number of garbage containers that are located within this property that's operated by solid waste. One of the conditions that we did receive from the Highway District as well as Idaho Department of Transportation is that they're looking to realign Howard Road right-of-way so that it intersects with Highway 54 at a right angle. So at some point in the future, there will be realignment, physical realignment, and the applicant was required to dedicate right-of-way along the western property line to allow that to happen at some point in the future. Of course, we have Super One and other commercial businesses directly to the west. These are some of the photos of the property in question. Howard Road bisecting the property, Highway 54 to the south, as well as the abandoned railroad right-of-way. I will not go through all of the agency comments. I'll try to stick to some of the ones that stood out and we had to work through, and it was quite a tedious process. But Idaho Transportation Department as well as Lakes Highway District requested that the applicant do a traffic impact study to determine the impacts associated with the proposal that it will have on Howard Road as well as Highway 54. That has been reviewed by ITD and they did state that they no longer have any concerns. Lakes Highway District requested that the applicant enter into a road development agreement with them and as well as the realignment of Howard Road right-of-way at some point in the future with a dedication of right-of-way area on the plat with the approval of this project. One other thing that we ran into when we were reviewing this application is you can see Hackney Airfield or the Hackney Airstrip is located directly to the northeast and it's currently actually encumbering a portion of this property. Unfortunately, when we originally started the review process, we did not receive comments from Idaho Transportation Department Division of Aeronautics, but we were able to communicate with them before the hearing, and we were able to come up with a set of conditions of approval that both the applicant, staff, as well as ITD Aeronautics Division agreed to. One of which is that the applicant designate a what's called a runway protection zone on the face of plat. They must demonstrate that lots that are encumbered by that runway protection zone have adequate room for construction of residences, which includes showing a 4,000 square foot building area outside of runway protection zone on those lots, and having restrictions from having absolutely no storage of personal property of any kind within the runway protection zone. The two improvements that the applicant or the developer along with the future lawn owners will have is the ability to construct roads as well as driveways through the runway protection zone, but vehicle parking is not authorized. One of the conditions of approval that staff and the hearing examiner prepared, and if I can refer you to condition of approval, that would be conditions of approval 7.15 and 7.16. The applicant will have to, in coordination with ITD, depict the runway protection zone as well as the critical area zone if that is required by Aeronautics Division. We are giving the applicant some wiggle room to work with that agency prior to final plat to make sure that any of the concerns that they did bring up, ITD Aeronautics Division, are accurately addressed on the face of plat, and the necessary restrictions are located on the face of plat as well. In condition 7.16, we do require that they have a 4,000 square foot building envelope, as I said, outside of the RPZ zone. Storage of any personal property, including vehicles and temporary structures, is prohibited within the runway protection zone, and that a no parking sign be located in this location where the road will be constructed, because it appears that this area of the plat will be encumbered by the runway protection zone. So we, in an attempt to address all of the necessary requirements, we believe that we crafted conditions that can adequately address those. The Hackney Airfield folks were present at the HE hearing, and they did state that they were pleased with both the applicant and the conditions that staff placed to make sure that their runway is protected, as well as the future lot owners' home sites. Additionally, the site will be served by individual wells and individual septic systems. The hearing examiner heard this request on April 21st and subsequently recommended approval of the request. Once again, here's the runway protection zone that we depicted on the face of the plat. And we did receive some public comments, but they were very minor in nature, and those that were opposed originally are in favor of the project because the concerns regarding Hackney Airfield have been addressed. And I stand for any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions? I counted 8 lots are affected by this. Is that the number you have?
At least 8.
Yes, at least 8.
So the green portion just to the northeast of the red zone, is that actual runway right there?
That's a mixture of a runway and the taxi, what do they call it? Taxiway, where the planes actually turn around. But the applicant has granted an easement, will be granting an easement over this area for the benefit of Hackney Airfield. So we had to count the runway protection zone from the edge of the taxiway or runway 1,000 feet southeast.
What kind of due diligence is the seller going to provide to make sure that the buyer fully understands? Because emotional buyers don't hear everything.
Looking at the conditions of approval, those will have to be depicted on the final plat for one, and then they'll be recording a navigation easement as against every parcel in the development, so it will at least be in the public record that there's aviation activity going on.
It'd show up in title.
Okay,
Easement, of course, would be either recorded or placed on the face of plat.
okay.
But we might ask Mr. MacArthur when it's his turn to speak to address that.
We're in,
Actually,
We're in deliberations.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess my concern is who is going to be able to enforce this area of no parking? I mean, is that incumbent upon the county? So we don't have the resources to go and make sure that no cars are parked on 8 different parcels.
Commissioner Duncan, the conditions of approval would have to be self-enforced similarly like to many other subdivisions that we process. that deal with other matters not related to no parking, but we do have conditions or conditional use permits, subdivisions, zone changes with conditional zoning development agreements,
Right.
which have specific conditions of approval that we put the burden on the applicant or future owners to comply with. And for us to question whether or not the conditions we place on a project are going to be enforceable would put pretty much all the projects on hold. We wouldn't be able to make a decision if we didn't trust the fact that this, the system and the conditions would work in the future.
Sure.
I think this is an age-old question, comes up with every plat everywhere in the country, frankly. It's always something of an issue with sellers and buyers. It's a classic buyer beware.
I just know that we have places around Coeur d'Alene Airport who buy and then call and complain. But you sign that you have,
Yeah, and they have navigation easements too, and,
Yep.
Some of them are even, some of the ones around the airport even have streets that are, themed, have that aviation theme to them,
right,
so.
right. They dotted all the i's, crossed all the t's. It just doesn't seem very smart, but that's not my job.
There's a limit to how far we can go with these things.
Yeah.
Commissioner Duncan, I'd like to point out, this is something that was addressed by Mr. MacArthur as well as Mr. Magnuson at the public hearing with the hearing examiner, is if you set aside this plat and you look at the current conditions of the property, there are 13 development rights that are available at this point. Those development rights do not have any of the restrictions that we are placing with this plat. So in essence, the RPZ, the runway protection zone, would not be evaluated. The no parking area would not be evaluated. No storage of personal property would not be evaluated. We would be, I don't want to use the word forced, but we would be required to uphold their development rights to all the primary structures on each lot, and therefore there would be absolutely no review of those building permits if this failed or if this never came through as it did today.
Well, and looking at the pictures, if they do end up, clearing the area, it's probably even going to be safer for the airplanes. It's just,
It's not
Concerning.
ideal, but it's better than it could have been.
yes. Yep. All right. Anything else?
No, I just, I can see one lot I would not want to buy there, but the other 2 or 3, I guess, are not terrible, but at the same time, this is a
Yep.
pre-approval, so.
Yeah.
It's a preliminary approval. Keep in mind that the conditions we proposed in staff analysis or in the staff report and HE recommendation are more restrictive than the Hackney Airfield folks had originally requested. What they requested was that there only be a restriction on, or height restriction of 50 feet on any of the structures. But they didn't request a specific runway protection zone, no parking, no storage of vehicles. So what we have before you today is, we believe, is more in line with the commercial protection requirements or commercial runway protection requirements that ITD Aeronautics Division had provided versus what Hackney Airfield folks originally
Requested.
provided through their public comment letters.
Yeah. Okay. Motion?
Yeah, I move that we give preliminary approval for MSP 21-0004, Ranch 54.
Second.
Bill Brooks, Pro Tem Duncan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Filios is excused.
All right. we can move on to variance 21-0012, Susan and Howell, 20-foot variance to the 25-foot front yard setback. And this is also Vlad. Thanks, Scott.
Once again, for the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request by Mr. and Mrs. Howell for a front yard variance of 20 feet to the required 25-foot front yard setback in the restricted residential zone. The subject property is located between Lower Hayden Lake Road and Upper Hayden Lake Road, east of Highway 95, just south of Hayden Lake. The subject property is currently vacant. It consists of approximately half an acre. It is extremely steep. I would say it's probably one of the steepest sites that I have worked on for quite some time. In fact, I will have photos in my presentation later on. It's almost like a cliff. You walk up to the edge of the road and it's a straight shot down. The applicants are looking to have access from Upper Hayden Lake Road, and therefore this is this property line is considered to be the front yard. This is considered to be the rear yard, and then these are side yard setbacks. The property is zone restricted residential. In fact, it previously consisted of 2 lots, but it was combined through a lot consolidation agreement. Therefore, it's one parcel of land with one development right. These are the photos. As you can see, it's got great views of the lake, but beyond this point where the gravel shoulder is, it's a cliff. I mean, it's just a nosedive. And so we believe that if in fact the applicant were to comply with the required 25-foot front yard setback, they would have to have, of course, the residence would be elevated, and they would have to have a bridge to their garage, and it would be very high up in the air. And so it, from a financial standpoint, probably from a structural standpoint, that would be a very challenging way to develop the property. So they're seeking a variance to have the structure as close as possible to the road. The applicants originally requested a 25-foot variance, which would have only a 0-foot setback. However, the highway district came back and says, no, unfortunately, that's going to conflict with our maintenance area of Upper Hayden Lake Road right of way, and therefore the applicants have gone back to the drawing board and requested move the house further north 5 feet with a 20-foot variance, which was acceptable to staff as well as the highway district. And now the closest point of the attached garage will be 5 feet from the front property line as well as the Upper Hayden Lake Road right of way. They will have a 3-point turnaround where their driveway is for safe entrance and exit from the site. This is a close-up of the site plan. This is the cross-section of the site. It's very steep. It has slopes. I think I read the geotechnical analysis upwards of 50%. And so by having it as close as 5 feet to the front property line, they would still need significant amount of fill to make it work. But they did submit a comprehensive geotechnical analysis that states that they would have to do significant amount of engineering as it relates to footings, grading, excavation, compaction, and so on. And we request that they do comply with all the provisions of that report when they seek a site disturbance permit as well as the building permit. The recommendations of the geotechnical analysis state that this site can be developed, and therefore we believe that this lot is not just of reasonable utility, but based on the proposed variance, it's feasible for them to construct the residence as requested. A majority of comments outside of what the highway district had stated were pretty much the same as for every other variance in this area. They do have to obtain an approach permit, but that seems just a standard process. We did receive two comments in support, one neutral and one in opposition. I frankly did not understand the comments in opposition, but sometimes it happens. We do believe that the applicant has an undue hardship because of the characteristics of the site. This is not a self-imposed request, or the hardship is not self-imposed. This will not be in conflict with the public interest. This will not adversely affect the adjoining property owners, and that we believe that it should be approved and the applicant should comply with the conditions of approval. The hearing examiner heard this request on April 21st and subsequently recommended approval. I do stand for any questions that you have.
Nope.
I don't either.
I move that we approve variance 21-0012, Susan and James Howell.
A second?
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Chairman Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios is excused.
All right, we're now to our business segment. And David, are you going to lead us? I didn't look in the...
Yes, please.
Okay, so when I looked in the folder last night, there wasn't anything there, but
There is now.
yeah, I see it now, so,
Actually, there was last night, but I changed it this morning.
okay.
It's a newer map.
Okay, I got the map up now, so
Thanks.
petition for Cougar Gulch area residents to rezone to rural.
The background of this is that after your upholding of my decision to allow a minor subdivision to go through in this area, Commissioner Philios thought it would be nice outreach to meet with the residents in the area. So he scheduled what he called a town hall meeting at the Grange, asked me to attend. There were about 45 neighbors showed up. I know because I counted them. And we listened for an hour about their concerns of water. And it was very clear, as you have heard, that they're worried, I think is a fair word to use. And so at that meeting, I suggested, one thing we could consider is a rezoning of this area to at least cut down on the density that are coming through with minor subdivisions. The neighbors jumped on that idea, and they've actually put together 62% of the owners in this area so far are in favor of rezoning. And they'd like to go from agricultural suburban to rural. They've done a pretty good job. Bud, would you see if you can find this map? It's in the update. What I'm handing out is that literal petition. And then this is a map that we put together that shows, and I'll pull up on the screen, Gladstone, the 62% in yellow, and the blue is just, they just haven't gotten that far yet. Meaning some of these people in blue are out-of-state owners. So I can't find it.
I have full screen on.
I don't know either, I'll just keep talking. We're almost done. The people that have worked most on this tell me that they believe they're going to have a number more of the blue areas. It's just a matter of time. And based on what I've seen so far, I think they're right. So the reason I wanted to get in front of you is for two questions for you to consider. One is, you could decide that the county could process this as a legislative matter and not charge the residents the $1,700 and change we would normally ask for a rezoning. And in that way, I'd be carrying it forward in the same way that we're doing the tribal zoning. Just staff works with the neighborhood and goes forward with it. The other aspect of it, though, is that there are some hard costs with rezonings, and if you're okay with it, if you agree that we do this legislatively, and you accept their petition, we go for the rezoning, I would still like to ask the neighborhood if they'd be willing to pay for the postcard notice, because there's 330 something parcels, and it would just sort of help defray some of the cost. So that's where we are on this. Does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions?
What happens if you don't get somebody's permission? Do they get rezoned without their approval?
Thanks for asking that. Not necessarily. You recall that the rezoning process has a public hearing with the Planning Commission and then again with you automatically. You would hear from all of those people. Ultimately, you would decide. My sense of this is that as with enough time, we may find the vast majority of people are in favor. Through the public hearing process, we could talk about even carving out the people that don't want the rezoning, and then that may look just fine for an effort, but it certainly would go a long way towards helping the neighborhood feel more comfortable about their water supply.
I like the idea. I like the idea that they already have, 60% on board.
Oh, here we go. I did gloss over one thing that we should mention just for clarity. The neighborhood came up with a generic line that they use for petition purposes. So all the people signing actually saw a map that looked like this. But when we look at actual property lines, this would make more sense for an actual rezoning to follow property lines.
Sure.
And some of this will just adjust as we hear more from the neighborhood.
So it says black other. Does that mean these are new inclusions, or what does the other stand for?
We just haven't gotten an actual response yet.
Okay.
So again, this is sort of a work in progress. At some point we'll have, the other will be either yellow or blue.
Was there any opposition at the meeting?
Not yet.
I think anytime you can get 62% of the people to agree on anything.
Yeah, Pat asked me if, I don't know if you heard, at the meeting if there was any opposition to the rezoning. And no, it was one of those rare moments when the entire audience was in favor of the idea.
Sure. I just want to make sure that we hear from every property owner.
course.
So is it possible, so you're talking about the postcards being mailed out.
Right.
I would almost want to say, get some kind of signed affidavit. I acknowledge I am giving up my development rights and with this zone change. So, but that's something we can address in the process.
Good process.
Yeah, but I think it's fine to go ahead. Collecting our hard costs would be great.
Useful.
Yeah, I just want to be careful that we don't set a precedence, and now we have all kinds of groups coming forward asking to not pay for work. So,
It's your call. If you feel like you want to ask them for the filing fee, you can certainly do that. I didn't make any promises.
sure. Can you get us that information, like what the filing fee plus the hard costs are going to be?
Sure.
I don't know what it costs for a zone change, but.
It's $1,700 and change
Okay.
is my memory for the filing fee, but the postcard notice would be whatever was it 35 cents? What'd you find on the last one, Betsy? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I know it's only
Times
51.
330 properties.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we have to make the financial decision today?
No, well, I could circle back with you next Thursday if you want.
Sure. Just so we have an
Did
idea.
you really say circle back?
I didn't hear you.
I said, did you really say circle back?
I did.
You did.
It's a southern term
Yeah, well,
It's a-
from my South
a
Texas
certain
upbringing.
redhead in Washington DC that speaks for the current president.
So thoughts, questions, Bill?
No,
Good to go forward?
at this point,
Yeah.
I'd have no problem asking them to help pay for it, but we're way ahead of the horse there, so.
Would you like me to come back with more information, or what do you want to do?
I'm fine starting the process
Okay.
for, doing the zone change. That's fine. I just really want to know how much it costs. And
Actual costs?
I have a feeling that it would be, especially depending on how many parcels we're talking about.
330 something.
Yeah, so 1,700 divided by, or 2,000 divided by 330 is probably not going to be a whole lot of,
Not a bank breaker.
right? So might be worth it to them to pitch in. So, yeah, I'm good with going forward. Bill is too.
Well, thank you.
Do we need a formal motion? It's not posted as an action item, so I don't think we can actually vote on
Take
it.
it as instruction
Yeah.
Yeah.
from you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That's our last item. So, meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioners.